All right, welcome to a special edition, a Selection Sunday edition of I don't even know that this isn't really the postgame show, but we got the Big Blue Crew, as I'm saying it, with me, Mike Gandolfo, Max Scobby, Jason Ince, reacting to the brackets. They were just released, and I guess the first thing we need to discuss is the draw that Kentucky got. Then I'd like to maybe break down the number one seeds a little bit and just kind of see where the conversation goes. No phone calls today, but you definitely can interact with the show. Just if you're watching on Facebook, leave a comment. We'll get them up here. We'll answer your questions. We'll address whatever you got to say. You'll see it pop up on the screen. Same thing with YouTube. I don't think you can leave a comment on Twitter for us to see it, but if one of us want to, if one of you guys want to look at the Twitter feed, you can. We're getting a sad emoji face already. I don't know if that's a Louisville fan. It's got to be a Louisville fan, right? Louisville will get in eventually. Right, there'll be an
Indiana fan, maybe.
Could be an IU fan. That is kind of sad. Just let's start there, man. I mean, this area only having one of those three in the tournament, and it seems like it's too far off. When's the last time that all three of them were in the tournament, Jason? You probably kind of remember that a little bit. I know hadn't been that long. I mean, it's been fairly recently, but it should be an every year occurrence, right? I mean, the tournament's better when Kentucky, Indiana, and Louisville are all in the tournament.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to Google it. It's been, I think it was at least before COVID, wasn't it? Because I can't remember the last time Indiana was in the tournament.
I think the last time Indiana was in the tournament was when they beat Kentucky. And I think that was like 2016 or 2017.
I was in Lexington for that game. I'll never forget. So, I mean, I can't remember. I might have been up there for this. I wonder if the Sweet 16 was going on at that time. But I was in Lexington for some reason, and I actually watched the end of that game in the
they were in it last year.
Up. Indiana was?
They were in it the last 2 years.
Yeah. No, never mind.
Yeah.
I thought it was
they were a 4 seed last year. That shows how bad my memory is.
Well, there it is. So, but it's been a while for Louisville to be in there for sure. So, let's get everybody back in there. That's what we want to have. Let's get all of them back in the tournament. That's what we want to see. So, first off, what were your all's gut reactions to see Kentucky as the 3 seed? They're playing Oakland in their first matchup. I don't know if I like this view. I think I'm going to go back to the other smaller screen thing. There we go. What were your all's takeaways, Jason? What'd you take away from Kentucky's draw?
I'm not at all worried about Oakland, just based on how they play. I think our biggest weakness is players that attack the rim off the dribble. We're going to have to guard the 3-point line because they've got 2 guys that between them have attempted 555 shots from beyond the arc this season. So if we leave them open and they're hitting, then we're in trouble. But they don't rebound exceptionally well. Looking at the base metrics, they don't defend exceptionally well. They do run a lower tempo. But if we can get them in a contest where they're taking a lot of threes and we can get out and run, then I'm not terribly concerned about that one. The second matchup does worry me a little bit, just because I think Texas Tech is the kind of team that can get physical with us and can cause us problems. Or NC State, excuse me, is the kind of team that can get physical with us and cause us problems. But, of course, they've got to get past Texas Tech first.
Max, any reaction from you with Kentucky's draw?
No, honestly, I was happy with a 3 seed because I thought after losing A&M that they would drop to a 4 seed. So happy on that aspect. But then just as Ince said, is that NC State kind of worries me a little bit because, again, it's all about the physicality on the in the paint that concerns me. But then 2, this is such a show me as a UK fan with this team. And especially with what happened 2 years ago when you lost to a Peacock, the year before you lose in the round of 32, and now you're in an opportunity to where either Texas Tech or NC State, they're both very good teams, and NC State is getting hot at the right time. So that aspect concerns me.
Yeah, NC State with just a historic run. Kevin Keats, who coached the Derby Classic my first year, and then, of course, he became a Louisville assistant right after that. And I'm always cheering for Kevin Keats. I like the guy a lot. He was at Hargrave Military Academy before that. And then but when you think about the fact that they beat 5 teams in 5 days, and the 5 schools they beat were Louisville, Syracuse, Duke, Virginia, and North Carolina, what that whole group right there combines for some stupid number of national championships. Every single one of them have a national title. I guess 14 national titles. Does that sound about right? Maybe 15 national titles out of that group. And they beat all of them on the way to get that W. NC State does make me nervous a little bit because Keats was playing for his life, you know. And Well, we'll see. We'll see if Texas Tech gives it to them. I think that Big 12 conference was so tough, right? So, like, we get a team like Texas Tech, who's a solid 6 seed, who might be a little under the radar. I mean, they're going in there. You got the spreads up, don't you? Jens? What's the spread on the Texas Tech NC State game?
It opened at 2.5, and it has already moved to 4.5.
Now, I'm not going to be as confident as Ince because I don't believe
that's Texas Tech favored.
Texas Tech favorite, yes. Because I don't know if I feel good about Kentucky beating anybody until they prove that they can get out of the first weekend again.
Right.
And so with that Oakland, and especially with this Oakland team, because you get the perfect formula for me is when you get one of these smaller conference schools, and this is Oakland up in Michigan, like they're in the Detroit. I mean, this is gonna be a bunch of tough kids, and like their top 4 players are 2 seniors and 2 grad students who are playing. I mean, Max, you've been in that position, like when you're playing and you know that you're playing where there might not be a tomorrow, or it might be the last time that you suit up when the lights are on and the referees are out there and you're in something special like the NCAA tournament. You can make some magic happen sometimes.
You really can, and it's all the perspective on the coaching staff on what you do for prep that week, especially when you're in a you can't really lose mentality. You made the tournament when people didn't think you were going to make it. To be able to just go out there and just be like, let's just go and play. Let's just go and have fun. Let's just see what happens. And it causes coaches to coach a lot more aggressive, kind of go against the normality of their conservative philosophies at times. And it could put a coach that, especially some of these big time coaches like a Calipari or a Rick Barnes, to where if you're caught on your heels, it's really hard to play catch up with a team like that. The only thing that helps you get back into these games is just the sheer talent, the talent gap between the two of them. But don't be surprised if Oakland comes out and they copy what A&M did, what Arkansas did the first time down down at Arkansas, and what Tennessee did, South Carolina. All these teams that beat Kentucky had the exact same philosophy and the exact same game plan. Be physical. And that is the one thing that has tripped up Kentucky ever since. Be physical with the paint, make Kentucky take the long two, and then win the rebound battle. And if you're Oakland, this is an opportunity. Again, Kentucky is everyone's Super Bowl. And now you have an opportunity to be a St. Peter's and repeat history. That's a huge advantage, especially for guys that are those seniors, those graduate guys, to leave a legacy like that. That's huge.
They got 3 guys over 6'7". That's all they've got. So size is not going to be their friend. So their only option really is to be physical. If you can't be big, you better be tough and physical. Kentucky literally has as many 7-footers as these guys have guys over 6'7". Kentucky should have a huge size advantage, but do they use it? And of course, one of the other things that just makes me somewhat nervous, because we know that teams tend to, like, even if they don't shoot the 3 well, they tend to shoot the 3 well against the Cats. Blake Lampman and Jack Golke, both combine for over 550 3-pointers on the season taken. So, you know, if they get hot, we've allowed guards in the past to kind of just go off on us and lose people in defenses and whatever else. And if they run things pretty solid, it could be tough. It could be a tough game for the Cats. You know, one of the betting angles we typically like is take a guard like Lampman. More than likely to probably be the one I go with. They got 4 guys averaging over double figures. The
best part of that angle though is guards that attack the rim.
That's true.
Which, thankfully, looking at the numbers, we mentioned the fact that Golke and Lampkin have attempted 552 threes on the season. They're both shooting 37%. They've only attempted combined 42 shots at the rim on the season. So they're
Right.
not going to the basket at all. They as a team, they don't get to the free throw line very much. They do play a slower tempo. That's what worries me. It's not so, there are two blueprints to beat us. The first blueprint is to get physical. The other one is to just simply shoot the lights out and get out early, because this teams have figured out that if you hit Kentucky early, they have to fight to get back, because you have that 2, 3, 4 minute start at the beginning where we don't have arguably our two best players on the floor. And if they can come out, play their tempo, if they can dictate tempo and get good looks from downtown and hit them, we're already behind the 8 ball 3 minutes in. We're already down 7, 8, 9, 10 points. If they continue to hit threes and don't let us get out and run, that's the other way they can beat us. So it is going to be vitally important that over the next 4 or 5 days, do we know yet when that game? I don't think they've
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Of course
it's Thursday, but we just don't know times yet. And of course, more than likely, I would say that this game is probably going to be the 9:30 start on Thursday. I'm going to go ahead and put that out.
It's in Pittsburgh, so don't they start the games earlier for the East Coast?
Yeah, they'll start at 7 and 9.
I thought it was like 1, 3, 5, 7 or something like that. Anyways,
yeah. They take a little break. So they'll do like 12 and 2, and then they'll take like a little dinner break. They might do 6 and 8, but we'll see. So I think you and I will be up late Thursday night. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, hopefully not as late as the last time we played on a Thursday night. But if they can get out to that early lead before we put Rob and Reed in, it puts us behind the 8 ball once again. And the other aspect that you have to think about this is you're playing 2 games in 3 days. If you have to expend a ton of energy trying to come back in that first game, it wears on the legs a little bit for that second game.
Yeah, and I mean, overall, I think what you just mentioned is really kind of key too, because if Oakland can come out and Dillingham and Shepard are on the bench and can find some open looks and hit a couple of them, because the worst thing you can do is let a team get confident. Like, this is a team that needs to be put away by the 10-minute mark in the first half. Like, you need to understand we're bigger than you. We're Kentucky. We're not messing around with you. And you just need to go away now, right? I mean, this is like, you go out there, you state your dominance, don't let them get confident, and hopefully put them away early. Max, do you trust that Kentucky's going to do that much prep work, or they're just going to kind of go out there and say, well, we don't really look at the other team and we don't really game plan for the other team. We just go do what we're going to do. Do you trust them to even have that kind of approach?
No.
Neither do I.
No. I mean, let history show for itself. I mean, you lost to Kansas State in round of 32. You lost to St. Peter's in the first round. What have you done just in general in a tournament setting, whether that's conference tournament or NCAA tournament? Eric Crawford put out a stat today looking at Kentucky and Louisville since I think it was either 2018 or 2019 with postseason wins, with Louisville at 1 and Kentucky at 2. Which is insane. That's such a insane statistic, and that's what I'm afraid of, Mike. Is that it's going to be Oakland's going to be prepared for this game. Oakland's going to play for something in this game, and I'm fearful that Kentucky's going to be looking ahead, just like they did during the SEC tournament against A&M. They were looking ahead. Or, as Cal said, the SEC tournament doesn't really matter because you want to really have your guys ready for the NCAA tournament. So until Kentucky shows that they can make it out of this weekend, I'm still not confident in it.
Real quick, Brandon Ramsey at KSR tweeted out that apparently Oakland plays zone. So, which goes back to the whole thing about their tallest players being 6'7". So I'm assuming we will see a lot of Trey Mitchell and Big Z in the middle, which I'm fine with, because if you have a 7'1" guy who can pass the way he does, and he's got a 6 foot or 6 inch height advantage over everybody who's trying to zone him. Again, this should be a game. If they're going to try to zone us with the shooters we've got, with the passing ability that we have, there's no excuse for not winning this game by double digits.
Yeah, there's been a lot of no excuses for lots of those games there. So.
What was the spread? True. What was the spread when Kentucky lost to St. Peter's? It was in the 20s, wasn't it?
Oh, easily.
Who?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I mean, 100% it was definitely that high. I think ultimately when you look at Cal cannot sit there and say like they put us in the toughest bracket or anything like that. So there's no whining, there's no complaining. At the end of the day, The other times that Kentucky has lost their first round or first matchup in the SEC tournament, they've lost in the first round twice. They've lost in the round of 32 twice, and then they've made it to the Sweet 16 twice. So, getting to the second weekend, I don't want to say that it seems like such a win for this group, but right now it almost kind of does. And we know that this team has the capacity, the ceiling to beat anyone in the country, but I think they also have that to lose anyone in the country. I really look at this quad with Texas Tech and NC State and Oakland, and I think it's going to be Kentucky or Texas State. We just lost Ince. Oh, he just turned his video off. All right, he's there. All right. So at the end of the day, I think Kentucky should get out of this quad and get to the Sweet 16. And, but man, we talked about it on the show lots, Jason. If Cal doesn't get out of this little quad of 4, he's got no excuses. He really doesn't have any excuses here.
And it's not just that he doesn't have excuses. He doesn't have any runway. You have burned your bridges with the fan base, the way that you have talked to them over the years, the way that you have treated them, the way that you have completely underperformed. You had a lot of fans, ourselves included, that were completely over him last season. And, he built this team. It's a fun team. People bought back in. They continued to underperform down the stretch. If you don't get to the second weekend, we talked about it the other night, Mike. We were UK fans, not us. UK fans ran Tubby out of town for a couple seasons with 10 losses, and he didn't get to 10 years or past 10 years. Cal's got no excuses, and I don't understand why he's not getting the same treatment when he hasn't been to a Final Four in, way too long. His title was 12 years ago. He continues to underperform with way more talent. And not even getting, Tubby at least got to the Sweet 16 on a consistent basis. If Cal doesn't reach, the second weekend, it'll be 5 years since he's been playing on that second weekend. So
2019, last time.
This is one of the most important weekends of his career at UK. Because if you can't get out of the first weekend, and especially with the draw, we didn't get any teams that are like, oh, they're way underseeded. They're gonna scare us. You got a team that had to win 5 straight games to get into the tournament. You've got a Texas Tech team that's been hit or miss all season, and you've got an Oakland team where you've got 3 guys who are 7'1", and they don't have a single player over 6'7".
Let's get to some of these comments. Yeah, well, they got 2 guys at 6'9". They have 3 guys that are 6 or 7 better. 3 guys are 6'7" better. They have 3 guys 6'7" or taller. They have 2 guys at 6'9". So.
Okay.
So we're getting it. Where's the leader of the Rat Pack? I guess that's of course is talking about Strebel. He's right there in the corner. If you can see him, at the round table, James Strebel. No, Strebel. He's got an
aura around him too.
As he does. He's just shining. He was going to be on, and then Kellen had a baseball game, and out in Evansville, and they ended up playing 2. I guess because it's such nice weather, you might as well just go ahead and play 2. So he's probably in the car on the way home, maybe listening to us. We'll see. We're getting a Nobody Cares, which is really nice because you're listening. So, I don't know. I would do something else with my time. The same Dennis is saying, look at the big brain on Max. Rig working you to learn some hoops. We're getting a lot of love for you right there. We're getting, if I'm a Kentucky fan, I would be worried more about NC State more than other teams, Texas Tech or Oakland, because NC State got momentum.
Yep.
Definitely true. I can't fault that at all. I think Texas Tech's a better team than NC State. You also got this week's got to take a lot out of NC State, that more than just what a couple days off can recharge you. So it'll be interesting to see, are they the adrenaline wears off and do they kind of crash a little bit, or are they able to carry that ride and keep it going? More of the shoulda, coulda, woulda. Cal will find a way to F it up. Yes, and then we're getting did Louisville get in? No, they did not. This Cole Nichter is going on a little bit of a run here. Ain't no Scott Drew going to that dump down there in Louisville. And I like your wooded background. Yes, thank you. I'm outside on the screen and porch right now. Maybe
so you look a little cold there, Mike.
It's beautiful out here. I was out here watching basketball. Thank you. And it's real. So where's
Yeah.
my news roll? I don't know. Jason Ben Shapiro Ince. I'm not really sure what that's all about, but you know.
Who didn't spell either part of my name correctly.
No. There it is. I'm pretty sure that you're not a Ben Shapiro fan. I'm probably a bigger Ben Shapiro fan than you are.
The joke is apparently I sometimes sound like him when I'm on air. So Max, that means you sound like Ben Shapiro.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it's because you talk a little bit faster than I do.
So what you're saying is
you've got
I
a
need
faster
to slow
pace
down how I talk so that I sound more like Max Godby.
I don't know. My own dad can't tell the difference between the two of us, so it's
between the two of you all. Seriously, I don't think you guys.
Oh, dude, we did a whole bit on it on Strebel show where we were literally alternating takes or answers while Strebel was asking, and someone texted in and goes, "Why is Godby's voice going in and out?"
I can't remember what I said, but I there was an answer I gave that I had Max channeled perfectly, and he almost falls out of his chair and has to like open the door. And...
Yeah.
Oh man. Let's see. And we heard we got Marcus saying, I heard you guys going off my brother Tox the other day. We love Tox. Tox and are now Twitter following each other. So you know, there it is.
Tox is my favorite Louisville fan.
Oh sure, yeah,
by far.
Let's talk before we get into the brackets and just really look at the matchups we like about the number one seeds. It was a super interesting. I'm getting is Gandolfo out hunting, and they misspelled my name, and that's is Ganfoldo. I don't. Jeez. All right, I don't know if that's Phil Baker or Sofro, but it doesn't matter.
Gandolfo the Gray.
So we're getting we had the number one seeds. It was really interesting just from the standpoint that everybody was losing. I mean, Houston loses by over 20 in their conference final. Tennessee and Arizona get knocked out early. UNC gets knocked out. Purdue gets knocked out by Wisconsin. The only number one seed to hold on and win their conference was UConn, and rightfully so. They're the overall number one seed. Does anyone have any problems with UConn being the overall number one seed?
No. In fact, if they hadn't been the number one seed, I'd have been wondering why.
And we kind of knew that no matter what, and the way it played out, that UConn, that Houston, and that Purdue were going to be number one seeds. I was a little surprised that Houston actually got the number one seed over Purdue, just because of how bad they lost their conference final. And then the conversation came up like, well, who's going to get that fourth one seed? And you really had four teams in play for it. Right? You had Arizona, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Iowa State. Iowa State goes on to win the Big 12 conference tournament. They're playing really, really well. Their strength of schedule, though, is pretty poor. But then, and really, when I looked at, I started looking at, well, who'd you lose to? Let's look at some of these bad losses. Man, I think Carolina's got some terrible losses.
Oh yeah,
and I'm just, I don't know, man. I really didn't think that Carolina was going to get that fourth number one. But you can't really give it to Arizona or Tennessee for losing so early in their conference tournament. So it really, to me, would have probably came down to them and Iowa State. And the committee saying that, hey, you got to go out there and play some teams in the non-conference in order for us to feel like we can put you there. So do you feel like that's what happened?
Yeah, I mean, Houston getting the number two overall doesn't shock me that much. When you look at their four losses, they were at Iowa State, at TCU, at Kansas, and then to Iowa State in the conference tournament. So no home losses, no bad losses. Every single one of their losses came to a tournament team. I mean, and they had good wins on their resume. So there's no shame in giving them the number two overall. I think if Tennessee had gotten out of the first round of the SEC tournament, even if they lose Saturday, I think they get in over North Carolina. I think North Carolina got it by default because they were, the only team that won games in their conference tournament. I don't know that they deserve it, but it's hard to make a case for someone else deserving it. And I think that's the issue.
Yeah. I mean, Tennessee, probably all they had to do was win one game and they probably would have gotten it. I think they would have been right there, but they got beat. SEC ends up with 8 teams. Big 12 ends up with 8 teams, tied for the most. And so yeah, keep it going there. All right, we're getting some more. Some people are picking all number 1 seeds in the Final Four. Terrible. Yes, I'm not picking Purdue to go to the Final Four.
I'm not picking Purdue to get to the Sweet 16. What are you talking about?
Probably not.
I don't know who's going to beat them, but somebody's going to beat them in the second round.
I would say for sure, though, I would definitely be picking UConn. We'll go through the brackets here in a second. UConn looks like they got a fairly easy route, and then and I'd probably like Houston to go to the Final Four, but that's probably I'll go with 2 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. We're saying is Gandolfo out hunting. Thank you, like and subscribe. So it's definitely so, bro. Speaking of though, the ESPN, just remember too, they got this bracket challenge going on. Sign up. You're gonna win the bracket challenge. You're gonna get a chance for all these great prizes that you get to draft and just say, hey, I want this first, and just come to the prize vault and pick all the amazing prizes. Where are they signing up for that? On the website?
Yeah, ESPNLouisville.com, and then also if you want to do Tuesday, they're going to be at Blind Squirrel. I don't know if it's the whole day, but they're going to be at Blind Squirrel most of the day. Yes, you can see the infamous cat in the background investigating. Sorry, I just see him in my view distracting me. They're going to be at Blind Squirrel, I think, most of the day doing signups. You'll be able to come out, sign up for some prizes, get some goodies, things like that. But yeah, we'll all have brackets in it, so it's not just about necessarily winning. It's about also being able to say you had a better bracket than Max Godby, who we discussed earlier has a very unique way of picking his bracket.
Oh, I want to know this.
Well, also just remember on the show Friday, ESPN's working on. There's going to be a catch. There's going to be a catch to this. You could win the ESPN bracket, but if you finish below me on the on the contest, you get punished.
Oh, okay. Like tattoos for everybody? Is that what we're doing?
I don't know yet. I haven't decided what the punishments are going to be yet.
Okay, all right.
But
we are getting is that Max Duffy? So if someone wants to know.
No, it's not Max Duffy. This catchy accent is not Australian, unfortunately.
We're getting Louis chiming in. Has Big Mike predicted a first round loss yet? I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, guys. Love the show. I am scared. I'm nervous until they win. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. So,
well, Michigan State team looks like they're gonna lose in the first round. Oh, he meant UK. My bad.
Yeah, Michigan State will lose in the first round. Yeah. ESPN 680, Louisville 939, the Vills, the last sports station. I guess that's true. And then the Duke love there for. I can't go there. I can't go with Duke. All right, let's go through this bracket real quick. Let's take a look. Let me pull it up. I just had it up. I guess I closed it. Starting off with UConn. The UConn bracket, I don't think we need to go. Do you all want to go back? Well, first off, Max, why don't you explain your unique way of picking your bracket?
Well, yeah, this is kind of the first year in a long time that I've actually really paid attention to basketball. And last year, I did not watch any basketball, not one game. I don't even, well, maybe I watched like 2 UK games. That was it. And so when my family does a bracket every year, so I'm like, what in the world am I going to do? I did watch one game, and I did what my grandmother used to do before she passed, which was she picked by mascot. And she usually finished in like the top 3 for doing that. I was like, well, okay, I'm just going to go based strictly on mascots, and wound up winning the whole thing.
Well, nice.
What do you do when the mascots are the same?
Then I go by my favorite color.
All right. So is between a grizzly and a peacock, which is what we were talking about earlier. We did lose. The Wildcats lost to a peacock, so you would have lost that one, I guess.
I did lose that one.
Yeah, peacocks can be pretty mean though. The Oakland's the Grizzlies. So you're saying
Grizzly would tear up a Wildcat.
Oh man,
like
that's
no
not good
other.
for us.
So Max is predicting a first round loss.
I mean, yeah. By history and my mascot analytics. I mean, are we talking? I mean, we don't even have really a decipher of what type of wildcat we're talking about.
That's true. It could be some of the feral cats that Ince has living in his apartment.
Exactly.
Hey, come on, man. My cat is a dapper gentleman. All right, he's got a bow tie on. By the way, speaking of bracket predictions, Dick Vitale has put his out. He has UConn beating Baylor in one Final Four game, Kentucky beating Tennessee in the other, and Kentucky beating UConn in the national championship.
Dickie B going with the. Oh, well, that would make history, right?
I don't
there,
know if that's a
because-
good thing or a bad thing for us, but that's the bracket he's put together.
Because what did we say? No NCAA champion has ever lost their first tournament game, and I think that's overall, like, when Cal says he doesn't care about the SEC tournament, you know, number one, that upset me a little bit the other day, and I didn't bring this up on the air on Friday, but I probably should have. I came Friday to the show after having dinner, after we picked up my son from his junior retreat. So St. X, the junior retreat's a really big deal. You all probably did something similar to Cal, right? Did you all do retreats and stuff, Max?
Yeah, we do retreats.
So junior retreat's a huge deal. And this guy, like his son gets up to talk at the retreat closing. He's like, I want to thank my mom and dad. Dad, I miss you, even though I know you're down in Nashville cheering on the Cats. The son wasn't mad that his dad wasn't there. He's like, go Cats. And I was like, dude, you just had to go sit through that crap and miss your son's retreat closing, which only happens once in his life. And I'm just like, and I was reminded, and we were talking about this, Vince, about how many people like save up all their vacation, and they know that this is their best chance to go see the Cats play. And for Cal to say he doesn't care about the SEC tournament, and what is so ridiculous. And then at the other time too, it's like, we talked about this being 3 seasons, and when you get to the postseason, you got to step up. If you don't step up and show that you're willing to step up in the conference tournament, you're not going to step up the NCAA tournament. And overall, that's where I'm probably the most worried about whether or not Cal can make Dickie V's dream come true and cut down the nets in Phoenix, Arizona. We know this team's capable. I just don't know if they're going to have the fight, because you gotta be amped up for it. You got to be ready to go. So,
well, first of all, we know Dickie B's bracket is completely wrong because he's got Rick Barnes in the Final Four. So that's the first thing. Mike, as he takes a drink. The second thing is, it's not just what does it say to the fans to hear Cal say that. What does it say to the players to have you're going into a game where, Friday night, you're going up against a team playing for their tournament lives on one side. Their coach is telling them, look, you lose tonight, it's over. Your season's over. You're going to the NIT. Maybe that, if we accept, which I'm seeing some teams are saying we're going to get a jump on NIL and transfer portal, which is something we should talk about later. But you've got that in one locker room. And then in the other locker room, you've got a coach who says, well, I don't really care about it all that much. If we win, we win. If we don't, it's no big deal. So it doesn't shock me that the players come out with a lack of urgency, that they come out with another slow start. And like you said, that's that last opportunity to kind of make any changes, tweaks, etc. One of the big ones needing to be stop coming out flat, stop coming out being down 7, 8, 9, 10 points at the under 16 timeout. You completely lost that. It's also the opportunity for them to play in what feels like a tournament atmosphere, which we got that last weekend against Tennessee. That game felt like a tournament game. But we've talked about the fact that, the first thing you did when we found out that Oakland was playing was your first question was, how many upperclassmen do they have? How many guys do they have that have played multiple years that kind of know what this is like? We're relying on a bunch of freshmen, and there have been a few times this year where they've shown that they're freshmen. That was a valuable experience to get them ready for what these tournament games are going to be like. And he completely just threw it away by the fact that he does not care about winning this tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And as an alum, Max, what's that do for you?
Well, I mean, I think both Cal and Stoops need to go back to PR training, because the gaffes of each of them so far that's just gone extremely tone deaf with the fan base is damning. And again, you're supposed to be a competitor. Any opportunity to win, especially it's one thing. It's one thing if you're A&M and you're fighting for your life. And this is the aspect of UK basketball that I've learned. It just comparing it to football, because that's the world I know, and that's the world I know really well, is that if Kentucky basketball claims to be the Alabama of basketball when it comes to just that domination, that prowess, that number one program in the country, no one else comes close to it, S tier, all that. And just think of the things that we've already said on air so far. First time, haven't been to the Sweet 16 since 2019. Haven't you've
No Final Four
had
since 2015.
no Final Four since 2015. Haven't won a title since 2012.
Yeah.
No SEC title since what, 2019 as well?
2018 was the last SEC title.
Last
2018
SEC title was 2018. I mean, there's a level of mediocrity when it comes to what Kentucky basketball is supposed to be and what the claim was, especially coming off of that 2014 season. And not only that, it's now, I think, catching on to the fan base as well, where it's just like, if we can get to the Sweet 16, that's a success this year. If we can at least have a run in the SEC tournament. And it's just like what's happened with football, because the expectation was after that 10-win season, it was the expectation's 8 to 9 wins every single year. That's the expectation now. And now from last year to this year, it's like, well, that conference realignment, I think we need to set the expectation back to 7. It's like, if you're claiming to be that program that's taken the next step, if you're claiming to be the program that's that S-tier program, that elite program, you don't settle. And that's been the most heartbreaking thing to watch for both programs, is how much it seems like both the coaching staff and the fan base is now starting to settle. It's like, just get to the Sweet 16. Just win 7 games. And as the competitor in me, it's like, no, you need to keep going. And especially as a sports alum from UK, it's like, no, you keep pressing to be better. And right now, as you said, when you make comments like SEC tournament really doesn't matter after you didn't even win the in-season SEC championship, it's just sucks.
Yeah, and for me, I've been, I'm there. The Sweet 16 thing for me comes from the fact that the NCAA tournament, and we all know this, it's one of the worst ways to actually, it's very entertaining. It is the most entertaining way to pick a champion, but it is the worst way to pick a champion, because a guy gets 2 early fouls and has to miss 15 minutes of the game. Oh my God, you've lost the game potentially. A player has, the worst shooting night of his season, or another guy has the best shooting night of his career. You're knocked out. It's a terrible way to pick. But looking at, our run, if we were to get to the second week, we're probably playing Marquette. That's a team that scares the crap out of me, because Tyler Kolek will score 50 points on this defense. You lose that game, you lose a close game in that one, UK fans are going to be upset, but nobody's going to be sitting there saying, well, Cal should, get fired. He lost to, a top 10 team. For me, talent-wise, the floor is Final Four, because there's not a team that this team shouldn't beat that they wouldn't play until the Final Four. Houston, I don't know. I think we could play with Houston. It would be an exceptionally good matchup, our guards versus their guards.
It'll be style difference too.
If you don't get to the Sweet 16 to where you're at least saying, yeah, we lost to a Marquette or we lost to a Houston, there's no excuse. And for him to consistently do this with it, if this were a team that barely got into the tournament, whatever. This team, as Mike and I have talked about multiple times, you have to pull up a second hand to count the number of players that are going to be playing in the NBA off of this team when it's all said and done. It's inexcusable to get knocked out in the first game of the SEC tournament. It's inexcusable to get dominated wire to wire in that game, which was the part that annoyed me the most. And at some point, you have to have pride in your job. You can't just sit back and rest on the laurels of, well, I got a bunch of guys to the pros and I'm getting paid $10 million a year and there's nothing you can do because our athletic director's a moron who likes to give out contracts to people that don't deserve them. And actually take some pride in doing your job, or get the hell out. Because Kentucky fans deserve better than this. Look at Louisville fans. They were livid when Kenny Payne wasn't fired after the first year, because they knew they deserved better. He didn't deserve a second year. He didn't earn a second year. They deserve better. Cal hasn't earned this damn contract he's got. He doesn't deserve the money he's getting. He doesn't deserve the tenure he's getting. And quite frankly, if he didn't have that contract, he'd have been fired by now. And that's what bothers me. So if you've got a job that you don't deserve right now based on the results you're getting, if I'm the top salesperson in my company and I'm making twice as much as anybody else and I'm 8th in sales, I'm not keeping my job. So at some point, John Calipari's either got to have some pride in his job or just go retire and do something else.
Well, if you're in sales too, you're gonna you make what you earn. I mean, that's the one thing I love about it too. I mean, Max, I think you're in sales too. I mean, you go out there and you're gonna, if you have a bad year, you're gonna be skinnier. So I mean, that's just the way it is. And,
well, no, for Max, he eats what he kills.
That's right.
or what he protects from the coyotes and foxes out in the backyard.
Exactly.
So let's go through this bracket. Let's take it in just the fours and just say, hey, what do we like about this four? The first matchups being UConn and Stetson. If you took that, you would definitely say a Husky would beat a Hat because the Stetson's the Hatters, right? FAU, the Owls, and Northwestern. There's another Wildcats there. I was actually surprised that FAU got an 8 seed. I think that's really, really high for them. I like to look at brackets and say, who do I think's overseeded? And FAU would be that team. I think there was a case to be made whether or not FAU would even be in the tournament this year. So do you all see any way that UConn's not coming out of that group of four?
It would take a collapse of epic proportions.
And I usually don't like the 8-9 matchups, but I'm feeling pretty confident that Northwestern's going to beat FAU. So
yeah, I think they said earlier that FAU losing that game was almost a quad 4 loss. It was barely a quad 3 loss.
Wow. So there you go. So UConn coming out of that group of four, punching their ticket for the Sweet 16 is the way we'll look at that. The next down that bracket, and so we are in the East bracket, San Diego State and UAB. To me, this is a fascinating 5-12 matchups. We know that the 5-12 matchups are usually really, really good, and this one should not disappoint because San Diego State is probably overseeded as well, and UAB is playing really, really. I watched a little bit of that conference championship. They look really good. Auburn and Yale. I'm looking at a UAB Auburn second round, and wouldn't be surprised if, how cool would that would be the two schools from Alabama going at it, and UAB's got a chance to knock off one of the big boys. But I'll trust my man. I'm blanking on his name. Bruce Pearl to get it done, and for Auburn to get to the Sweet 16. Do you see? How do you all see it playing out?
I mean, Auburn's top 10, and we know how important this is for picking champions. Auburn's the only team that's top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency in KenPom. And I mean, they clearly handled Florida today. They shot lights out in the second half. That's one of those teams that seems to play to the level of their competition. So they're going to have to make sure that they don't overlook Yale. But that's the kind of team that I think can make a run. I think they could give UConn some problems with how physically they play, but I also think UConn can do to them what we did to them and just simply shoot them off the floor. Yeah.
Max, any take on those?
No, I really like Auburn, and I really like Auburn to make another run as well. They're my team right now that just looks really impressive. And we'll get to my other team once we get to that region. But I love the idea of an Auburn UAB matchup.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Moving to the bottom half of that East bracket, the Fighting Mark Popes of BYU take on Duquesne, another really intriguing 6-11 game to me. And then Illinois, who just won the Big Ten, will take on Morehead State. And Preston Spradlin's got a good team, man. And then, unfortunately, Reese Davis, not Reese Davis, but what's the guy from CBS that mentioned that, how good Morehead State was. And he almost picked him, talked about how good that, they've got a really good team. And this to me could be an upset centric. BYU has played really, really good at times, but then they've lost some very questionable games. I'm not 100% sold on how good Illinois is. I look at the Big Ten, and I know everyone loves that conference, but to me, it's like Purdue, and then there's a big drop down to the next team, which is Illinois. I don't really know if Illinois deserves to be a 3 seed. I think they kind of got it by default because they won the Big Ten. So I could see any of these 4 teams actually making it to the Sweet 16.
Wasn't it last year where all the Big Ten teams were out by the second weekend? It
was
all
something
out
like that,
the
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Big Ten is what it is. They're milk toast. They're not very good, and then when they play actual teams from other conferences, they get exposed. So Iowa State is an interesting team for me because you look at most of their losses, they've been good losses, which you quantify as good loss. The loss to Kansas State was not a good loss, but then you turn around and they absolutely thump Houston. And so it's one of those teams where I could see them completely peeing down their leg, but at the same time, they've got some really good wins.
Well, I wasn't
They're
down
not
there
a
yet.
team.
But,
They're
you know,
not a team
we
though
can
that I
go there.
look at and they're like, oh my God, they're an amazing team. They go out there and they get the job done.
I mean, if we want to include that Washington State Drake matchup and the Iowa State South Dakota State matchup, we definitely could put that in there too. I would be shocked to see Iowa State not come out of that group, that bottom half of that bracket.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that concerns me about Iowa State, they don't have a go-to player. They have 6 players that average between 8 and 13.8 points per game. And we know when it comes to tournament time, there are some games where you've got to have a guy, things just aren't working. You've got to have a guy you can turn to and say, we need you to go win us the game. I don't know that they have that player.
Andy Sweeney asking, is this round of shots?
No, we don't have Kevin Hale in his creepy basement anywhere.
I mean, Sweeney, listen, if you want me to send you a link to get on here with us, we would do it. So, just let me know and we'll get you on. We'd love
you
to
can
see
be you can be bourboned up if need be. It doesn't.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah. All right. So out of that whole group, who do you all like coming out of that bottom half? Is it Iowa State? Do you like the upset run? To me, this is going to be that side where you're going to see the upset run, and if you're going to see some double-digit seeds, it's going to be here. No takers. Okay.
I mean, I still think Iowa State, based on the teams that are in there. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on Morehead State or Drake or any of these teams, but Iowa State doesn't have very many bad losses, and that's early on. What I look at is does a team have? Kentucky's got games where I go, okay, yeah, they could get knocked off by a lesser team. They have games where they've completely overlooked an opponent or a style matchup has caused them problems. Iowa State has lost to mostly good teams. And even when they're close games, most of them have been against good teams. So I don't see them losing this early in the tournament. I think they'll probably go out in the Sweet 16.
I was literally watching a bit ago and saw Max was moving his hands and I saw his mouth moving. Totally thought it was Vince talking. No joke. So.
Oh,
I love it, man. I love it. All right. Overall, this bracket to me, if I had to pick 3 teams that I think would come out of this, it would be Auburn. I could see Auburn making a run to the Final Four with this bracket. UConn is going to 100% be my pick to go to the Final Four. And then I do have to give a little love to Iowa State. Although the UConn and Iowa State play, I think it's going to be a bloodbath. So I gotta go with the Huskies coming out of the East. Let's see. All right, on the West side.
By the way, right now, just to that point, the early returns on ESPN's bracket challenge, 27.2% of brackets have picked UConn. Nobody else is over 12%. North Carolina is actually number 2. UK is number 6 at 4.9%.
As like the national title?
Yeah.
The national champions?
Yeah, UK is at 4.9% behind Iowa State and Purdue. Ugh.
Purdue's not there, so that ain't happening. Speaking of North Carolina is the 1 seed in the West. They get shipped across the country. They're like get Baycott way far away. They're going to play the playing game for the 16 seeds. I'm not even sure who's in that matchup. I don't think it really matters. Carolina's going to win that game. But then we get the intriguing game because I think Mississippi State is very capable. Well, I think they hand it to Michigan State, but I think Mississippi State's a terrible matchup for North Carolina. And I'm not going to be surprised at all if Mississippi State goes to the Sweet 16. I know I'm going to sound like an SAC homer here, but if you've listened to me all year long during the season, I've never shied away from how much I love Mississippi State and the potential that they have.
Yeah, and Baycott's shown that when you get physical with him, he doesn't like it too much. And by the way, please, thank you for shipping him out west. Hopefully they're playing like the 11 o'clock game where nobody has to see his ugly face. God, he is one of the ugliest players I've ever seen. Anyways, North Carolina is not a team that impresses me at all. It goes back to what I was talking about with Iowa State. where I look at a team and I say, okay, do they have games where they've shown that they either come out, they look flat, or they play down to their competition, or they can be beaten by matchups? And North Carolina is absolutely that team. They are going to be fully predicated, I think, on their matchups. They're an inconsistent team. Like you said earlier, I'm not impressed at all with the ACC this season. And that's a conference that they should have easily won the final. And instead, they lose to a team that was playing for the fifth time in 5 games. Or I can't talk today.
And
fifth time in 5 days. God.
Even if NC State loses that game, they're not making the tournament. Like, just because you're in the ACC final, they were not making the tournament.
Yeah.
They got in by the hair of their chin, and they had to win to get in. That was the only way NC State was getting in. They lost to an NIT team in their conference championship game.
Speaking of NIT, St. John's told the NIT not to invite them.
Oh, well, there you go.
Rick Pitino is above the NIT. All right.
Pitino ain't playing.
He does not need to be going on buses to play in the middle of Iowa or Kansas to play.
He's got to go cheer on Richard in the NCAA tournament, man. Come on.
You know? I love that. Which, by the way, Nicole Auerbach was reporting earlier that Richard Pitino in New Mexico were not in unless they won their conference tournament game. I love that he knocked out his father out of the tournament.
Well, according to, they weren't even one of the first 4 out. They weren't even really considered, which shocks me. Yeah. So Carolina will, I got them going against, losing to Mississippi State. Max, you got anything to say about that quad? I know you love Michigan State, right?
Oh, Michigan State is basically Tom Izzo's program's been dead in the water for years, and the NCAA and all the dark money that comes for the Big Ten and TV money has basically forced Michigan State to stay good and be relative. So no, I think Mississippi State just. I like your take on Mississippi State. I don't know. I'm not confident enough yet to pick Carolina. It's far away from Wednesday, so I may get bold, but I do like Mississippi State to beat Michigan State, and then I don't know. I like that Carolina matchup.
I'll tell you what, the RJ Davis Hubbard matchup could be freaking amazing, as well as the Baycott and Tulu Smith matchup. They could just be really good. St. Mary's is going to go play Grand Canyon, Alabama, and Charleston. If I'm looking at this group before, I kind of like St. Mary's to come out of this group. That's kind of. I think Alabama might be in trouble in round 1. If I was picking an upset, I'd look really hard at that Charleston Alabama game. St. Mary's to me is the team that's coming out of there. Vince, what do you say?
And they're playing in Spokane, so that's going to give them a huge advantage in terms of fans. The problem with Alabama.
Good luck, Alabama. Alabama's got to go play in the Spokane. It's like St. Mary's got such a gift right there. They might as well just switch them, right? Make St. Mary's the 4 seed and Alabama the 5.
Yeah, and that's what happened to us. When in 2003, we were the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. We had to go to Milwaukee, and we had to play Marquette in the Elite 8 and Wisconsin in the Sweet 16. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you putting us in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 when we're 100 miles away from both these schools? The issue with picking Alabama, and it drives me nuts every year, is their floor is so low and their ceiling is so high because all they do is shoot threes and get to the rim. And if they're hitting their threes, there's not many teams that can beat them. But you can't predict, they're gonna miss 15 wide open threes in this particular game. So with them, I usually just tend to pick them to get upset early because I know it's eventually going to happen.
All right, yeah, I think that's good logic.
What I need to start doing is like travel into the arenas that they're going to play in and try to figure out, like, is this a good shooting arena or a bad shooting arena for sightlines?
The Cougars are Charleston's mascot, by the way, Max. Will the Cougars beat an elephant? Will a cougar take down an elephant?
No. Now, if we were talking like a jaguar or a cheetah, maybe. But I don't think a cougar's able to do that. So I've got the tide on this one.
When you're scoping out a bar scene, would you rather be close to a cougar or an elephant?
Neither.
Max is not going to comment on that one.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah. All right. Let's go on to the next group of 4 teams. Clemson, another overvalued ACC team, in my estimation, plays Richard Pitino and Jamal Mashburn Jr., which I'm loving, getting to watch him play the other day for a little bit. Baylor and Colgate are in the other matchup. I think we've all mentioned it earlier, how much we would love to see a Richard Pitino, Scott Drew matchup in the second round, and the winner goes on to the Sweet 16, and the loser takes the Louisville job, just so they can get started early, right?
Plus, I mean, because it's a less desirable job, in my opinion, than either one of those jobs.
What, Louisville's less desirable than New Mexico?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Go play in the pit, man. Love it. I honestly, truly do think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be Scott Drew. It's going to be Richard Pitino. I definitely see Scott Drew marching on to the Sweet 16 out of that group of 4.
Yeah, no disagreement there.
Okay. All right. Dayton, Nevada, and then Arizona, Long Beach State. Any danger to Arizona, who always seems to – I always get to this point and say Arizona's looks like they're in great shape, but, man, this is another team that just struggles to get to live up to expectations in the tournament is the Arizona Wildcats. Now, we know that they're only in the second year with their head coach, and so a lot could be different. Arizona should be making a run right here. Max is nodding yes. Vince?
Yeah.
He takes them. Yeah. All right. So then if we came down to an Arizona-Baylor matchup, who do you all like in that one?
I mean, the Big 12 was the best conference in the country this year. One of the perks of being in a conference that's that deep is that you learn how to win tough games. You learn how to play in tough games. And I don't know that Arizona's gotten that kind of experience this season. And they've, like you mentioned, they have found a way the last couple of years to lose games that they had no business losing in the NCAA tournament. So I don't think Baylor's going to, make a deep run in the tournament, but in a 1-game sample size, I'll take Baylor every day in that matchup.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think Baylor marches on, and then that would give them the matchup with whoever comes out of the top part of that bracket, whether it's St. Mary's, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Mississippi State, who knows? Baylor's got a legit shot to go to the Final Four in this group. So Scott Drew, Louisville fans might have to wait a little bit longer for Scott Drew.
It's going to come down to Baylor's defense because Baylor's ranked 78th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So they're a little bit like us in that they can score and they're very effective on offense. They crash the offensive glass exceptionally well. They're top 25 in offensive rebound rate. Arizona is 5th in defensive rebound rate. So if they're not able to get those second chance points, then Arizona wins the game. But again, that goes back to Arizona's had teams in the past couple of years where, they are really strong, metrics are all on their side, and then they just come out and they look like us and they lay an egg.
Yeah, not ready for the tournament at all almost. Let's switch over to the Midwest where Purdue will be the number 1 seed. And again, this is all about where's Purdue going to get upset, right? So Purdue with Utah State and TCU, man, it's hard for me to think that Purdue gets knocked out by either one of those two teams. But then when you look at the bottom part of the bracket, you got a really interesting matchup with Gonzaga taking on Will Wade and McNeese State, and then Kansas, who's just been, to me, just way underachieving this year, playing Stanford. Does the winner of Gonzaga, McNeese State take on Purdue in the Sweet 16?
Yes.
Max is saying yes. All right. You guys got to help me out here a little bit. Come on.
Their name ain't Purdue. Their name ain't Perdone, as in Perdone have a chance to reach the Sweet 16 this year.
They don't have a chance. I think they'll make it to the Sweet 16, but I think they won't make it to the Final Four. South Carolina and Oregon is another intriguing matchup. Dana Altman does usually have his team playing really well. Was that
real quick? The reason why I'm saying that they're not going to, and I was trying to pull this up because I was looking at it earlier. Utah State ranks 26th in the country in getting to the free throw line.
Okay.
The way you beat Purdue is you get Zach Edey in foul trouble. You get Zach Edey in foul trouble, they're not winning a game. And they get to the free throw line on 40% of their offensive trips.
Utah State, with a win over Richard Pitino, so just looking real quick at some of their wins and who they've played and who they played in the non-conference. I mean, they're pretty lightly tested, so it's going to be interesting to see if that translates over to did they even play like BYU or Utah?
Yeah, Utah State, and again, this comes down to Utah State's got to get to that game. They're
Right. They gotta beat
304th
TCU.
in 2-point defense. They do not defend the rim very well at all, and they don't shoot the three-pointer very well. So they are a team that drive like they'd be a matchup nightmare for UK because they attack the rim. They attack the rim. They go inside of their big men. They are 11th in the country in 2-point offense. So if they can get through that first round game, they're a team that can hurt Purdue by getting Zach Edey off the floor.
Then we've got the bottom half of that bracket with South Carolina and Oregon, Creighton and Akron, which I know a lot of people are looking at that game as a really good potential win. You wanted to ask Max a little bit about that Akron finish.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever had something like that with one of your teams where a guy's lost track of time and score, or either hasn't gone out of bounds when he should have to preserve clock, or gotten down, or just made a mistake that killed you? If so, how did you guys react to it?
No, because I think that's one aspect about being a really good teammate is keeping guys, and again, basketball, it's about keeping track of time, keeping track of score. But with like football, it's the down and distance, where you are in the field. If you're on the short hash, long hash, whatever it is, especially if you're depending on where the play's going. So amongst the offensive line, it was constantly communicating, hey, it's second down here, it's second down, hey, we're on the short end of the field, or short side of the field, watch the corner blitz coming to the left or coming from the short end, watch for the shark blitz because we're in the middle of the field, whatever it was. So there was always that communication, make sure everyone was on the same page. Basketball, I guess you just get in a rhythm, and sometimes you just don't communicate it out. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience in that because we had a very over-communicative group.
Were you ever basketball as well? So you're saying your teammates never did it. You were the one. No.
Yeah, it was always me that had to make sure they were on. Dude, I'll tell you this. There was I had a painkiller for Georgia. I really messed up my toe two of my toes during that game, and they gave me medication for it, and I don't know if the dosage was wrong or whatever, but dude, I came out in the second half and I could smell colors. Like I could smell the red, Georgia's red, and I could smell the green. And it was hilarious because you could see me just kind of just doze, like you would watch the film and you see my head just going down, and then Darian Miller, Toth, or Zach West would just tap me on my shoulder. I go, oh, yeah, that's right. And just get me right back dialed in. And it wasn't until the fourth quarter, until the pain started coming back, where I was just like, oh, my goodness. Like, I was just in a fog this whole time.
This segment's brought to you by 502 Hemp. No.
When you said painkiller, I thought you meant medicine. I'm starting to wonder if you meant the alcoholic beverage.
No, trust me. It was definitely medication.
I smell colors. Justin, I know you're watching. I need you to cut that.
When we get down to the bottom half of this bracket, South Carolina and Oregon should be a very fun matchup. Creighton takes on Akron. I actually think that Creighton could be the team that comes out of this bracket with the Final Four. I love the Big East, but Creighton is also one of those teams that feels like they can lose to anybody as well. Texas, who I don't have a lot of faith in, will play the playing game on the 10, which is Virginia and Colorado State. Colorado State at one time, we got to remember, was ranked in the top 15 in the country. Virginia playing the style they do. I was really surprised to see that Virginia got in. And then at the bottom, we get Tennessee playing St. Peter's. And what a gift it would be for St. Peter's to knock off Tennessee. Oh, my gosh.
If that happened.
It would be amazing. Can a volunteer with a little coonhound dog lose to a peacock?
Well, remember, their mascot isn't the greyhound dog. It's the volunteer.
Yeah, with the gun and the muzzle and all that stuff. So
one barrel-loaded muzzle against a peacock. You're assuming that volunteer still has a barrel-loaded pistol and then a knife.
He's trash though, in the bourbon.
Would someone ever shoot a peacock?
I mean, we're talking about Tennessee. Like basically anyone that touches the Appalachian Mountains, they're going to shoot a peacock.
If it moves,
the stigma that would come with shooting such a beautiful and graceful animal, he's probably going to put the gun down and be like, "No, it's not worth it."
This ain't Caliance. That the bird's dead. Volunteers win because he's going to shoot the bird.
I actually think Tennessee's got kind of a cakewalk to play Creighton, but I'll take Creighton in that matchup with Tennessee. And I'm telling you right now, if I'm looking at this bracket right now, I think I'm looking at either Creighton or Gonzaga, and I don't think Gonzaga's really that good. I'm picking Creighton to go to the Final Four out of this group, out of this bracket.
Wow.
So that would be my that'd be my selection. So right now, if you're listening to the Gandolfo first reaction Final Four, I've got UConn, I've got Baylor, and I've got Creighton in the Final Four. Then we get to the South, the dirty South, where the Kentucky Wildcats are the 3 seed. The number 1 seed is a very, very good Houston team, regardless of what happened in that Iowa State game. It's really interesting to me because if you're defensive minded, the whole idea is that you don't have bad defensive days, but they definitely had a bad defensive day. They just couldn't score with Iowa State to even come close to it. So Houston will play Longwood, but then their other matchup, could Texas A&M give Houston trouble the same way that they gave Kentucky trouble? They got Texas A&M's going to play Nebraska. Nebraska's a sleepy team. I think people are maybe undervaluing how good they could be. I could see that Nebraska Texas A&M game to me is a true coin toss. Do you see Houston having a problem with either one of those teams?
No, and it comes down to a simple fact of if Kentucky learns how to defend guards, they don't lose that game. Houston's the best defensive team in the country. Their guards are relentless. And Wade Taylor's not getting those open looks he got against Kentucky, and he's sure as hell not getting to the rim. So if you can take Wade Taylor and make him a non-factor, they're not winning that game. If Kentucky were able to do that, they walk easily both times against Texas A&M. That's the difference for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what Houston's calling card is, to play excellent defense. They'll be ready for whatever Texas A&M is going to throw at them. The bottom half of that the bottom quarter of that top half of the bracket looks like it could be upset central, because you're going to get a ton of people picking James Madison to beat Wisconsin. You're going to get a ton of people taking Vermont to beat Duke. I mean, that Vermont Duke game to me is right. You were talking about it earlier. What do you think about that Vermont Duke game?
I mean, I've already taken Vermont to cover the spread. It was 12.5 points on that one. And right now, just checking real quick to see if that has moved. It's down. It's down now to 11.5, so it's already come down a point. But
wow,
yeah, I Duke does not scare me at all. And the difference between Duke a couple years ago and the years past and now, John Shire hasn't shown me he can actually win a game against a tough opponent when it matters. Strebel nailed it 100%. Now, granted, let's not give Strebel too much credit. He was just being Strebel and having a lot of bravado, and Duke could have, won a national championship, and he'd still say John Shire sucks. But he is correct. John Shire sucks.
I would agree. So, I mean, you easily could get a Vermont James Madison matchup there, which to me says that Houston is marching straight on to the Elite Eight. I don't see anybody getting Houston's way to get to the Elite Eight.
No.
At the bottom part of that bracket, we talked about Kentucky and Oakland already, and the NC State, Texas Tech. Little scared, obviously, but we think Kentucky can roll on to the Sweet 16. And then you get Florida taking on the winner of Boise State and Colorado. Colorado's a pretty good team. Florida, of course, playing with a whole lot of emotion now, man. That injury happened so early in the SEC title game, and it really took them back. It took them a couple minutes to kind of recover and start playing the way that Florida can play. I love Florida. I think they had a really big loss, though, today with the injury. And so for that reason, I definitely like Marquette coming out of that bottom quad. And I really am going to struggle to see a way that Kentucky can beat Marquette in the Sweet 16.
Marquette's top 20 in offensive and defensive efficiency. And we've talked ad nauseum about how you beat Kentucky. There's 2 ways. Marquette can do both. And, if we were to get to that point, and I'm not going to pick Kentucky to lose before the Sweet 16, this is where, early glance at the bracket, this is where I'll have them losing. I'll bet the over on everything for Tyler Kolek. Points, 30 points, I'll take the over. 15 assists, I'll take the over. Because he is the exact prototype of the player that can absolutely destroy Kentucky at the defensive end. He is a guy that can get into the lane. He's one of the best passers in the country once he gets into the paint. He's a guy that can get to the paint at will, and he'll kill us on pick and roll. And he could easily go for a Reed Shepherd stat line and have 30 and 15 in that game.
I also love if people remember last year, Marquette wins the Big East tournament after being picked near the bottom in the preseason polls. And then when they asked Kolek about what he thought about him, he just said, F him. Like on the air in his interview in media days. Like, what do you think about being picked last in the Big East? He just said, F him. And then he goes out, wins the whole thing. He has an unbelievable Big East tournament. They underperformed in the NCAA tournament last year, but of course, they had somebody from that conference go on to win that title with UConn winning it. I think Marquette's dangerous. I think a Marquette-Houston Elite Eight matchup could be the best Elite Eight matchup that we have in the entire tournament. I originally thought Houston, but you know what? I'm going to say the Marquette Golden Eagles are going to be the ones that come out of this bracket, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Marquette or Houston. But those are the two teams that I would lean towards in the South. In the South, but Kentucky got lucky to be in the South. Let's be honest with that too. That they get to be somewhat close to home.
I'm kind of surprised they put them in Pittsburgh and not in Indianapolis, but I guess that is the punishment, I guess, for not winning Friday was that
Right.
you don't get to go as close to home as you'd like. Then again, Pittsburgh might be closer to Lexington than Indianapolis is.
Ooh, I don't know.
I'm thinking about it from here, but
Right.
from Lexington, it might be a little bit closer.
It's about 3 hours from Columbus, and then I guess Lexington's about 2 hours from Columbus. It's probably about a 5-hour drive. I mean, it's not only that, it's John Calipari's old stomping grounds, man. I mean, that's where he's from. He'll go to take his team out to all the good Italian restaurants in Pittsburgh. You won't have to worry about Kentucky players being distracted by beautiful women because there are no beautiful women in Pittsburgh. Might be the city with the ugliest women in the United States.
I don't know if you ever been here. No, I'm not going to make that joke. In terms of the Houston Marquette matchup, I'm completely on the opposite side. Again, I go back to who have you lost to, not necessarily who have you beaten. And Marquette's Big East only got 3 teams, which is the first thing to
tragedy,
point
by the
out.
way, but yeah.
And but the fact that they only got 3 teams makes some of those losses look worse because they lost at Providence, they lost to Purdue by 3, but that was early in the season. They lost at Wisconsin by 11. They lost at Seton Hall. They lost at home to Butler. They lost at UConn 81-53. If you can't be competitive against UConn, you're not beating Houston, in my opinion.
Well, Houston just lost by 26 in their conference championship game.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to go back and look at because I didn't watch the game. I'd be curious to see what happened in that game. The fact of the matter is they didn't have anything to play for. I'm not saying that's why they lost, but I'm wondering if they got to a point where he just said, you know what, let's get guys off the floor because they're not going to top UConn as the number 1 seed with UConn doing what they did, and they're locked in for a number 1 seed regardless. So I don't know what happened in that game. I've got to go back and watch. But at the same time, again, Houston lost to good teams. Marquette lost to some teams that they had no business losing to, and they weren't competitive really in either game against UConn.
I would argue that,
and I will say this: if Marquette didn't have a point guard who could do the exact same thing to us that every other team that has beaten us has, I would probably pick Kentucky to beat Marquette. The problem is matchup-wise, they're a huge problem for us.
I definitely agree with you on the Houston's losses. I mean, Houston's losses are against Iowa State, Kansas, TCU, and they lost Iowa State twice. Iowa State might just be one of those bad matchups for them. Who knows? But when I look at that, what you rattled off on Marquette's losses, like Seton Hall to me was as good as a lot of these tournament teams. So is Providence. I'm actually kind of shocked that Providence did not get in. The Butler loss is probably the one. I actually look at the Big East only getting 3 teams, and I think that their depth was so impressive that they probably just beat up on each other way too much. In a lot of ways. I mean, DePaul's terrible, but outside of that, and Butler and Xavier were down this year. That was a really, really good really, really good league. And we're getting right now, we're actually we're actually getting a great question from Michael John Columbus saying, does Western have any, it says the S word, but he meant shot.
Mike, we're on the
against
internet.
Marquette.
You can say shit.
Okay. Does Western have any shit against Marquette, which he meant, but he said I meant shot. So, he didn't say so. And who knows, man? Who knows if Western can go out there and take down Marquette? That would be great, because if Western does do that, then it helps Kentucky's chances of moving on. But I would, if we're going to lose to a team in this week's scene, I'd rather lose to Marquette than lose to Western. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to.
I already get enough crap at work about how football we won't schedule Western anymore. So I do not need that smoke of us losing to Western Kentucky.
Gabby, were you on those teams?
Job.
Yeah, I was on both those teams.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Should we just kick Max off right now?
Yeah. So it's your fault. So it's your fault that I get reminded every week that we're afraid to schedule Western Kentucky in football anymore, is what you're saying.
Actually, no, because I got benched that game. So, no. I got benched right before I got the start, and right before we went on, they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go with someone else." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then we got our teeth kicked in by Petrino. And then Neil Brown came to me after the game and said, "Sorry, should have started you." I was like, "Okay,
thanks."
Good to know.
But at least now you can remind people I wasn't even in that game.
I was not. I had nothing to contribute that game.
All right, so you all have a first reaction? Like, this is obviously not what you're going to be held to. Final four that you all would want to kind of throw out there as we kind of wrap things up. We got 911 people that are watching us live right now. So,
I mean, for UConn and Houston are my, and I don't ever like immediately just putting a 1 seed in, but I don't think there's any argument that they've clearly been the 2 best teams in the country all season. The NCAA tournament is a guard-dominated competition, and they are relentless defensively. So even if they come up against a team where they're not shooting well in that particular game, their defense is going to keep them in games. I don't know on the West and Midwest.
The West is crazy.
If I'm forced to put money on it right now, there's no team in the West that I look at and say, "Oh yeah, I've got them reaching the Elite 8." Because there's every single one of those teams I can make it 8 seed up. I can make a case for, except for
the most
Clemson.
wide open bracket for sure.
Good. But I could see Mississippi State going on a run, but I could see them losing in the first round. I could see St. Mary's going on a run. I could see Alabama. It's the West is going to be, I think, the region that destroys the most brackets. And I think that's the one. If you can pick who comes out of the West, you're going to be in a good position to win your bracket pool, unless you do, Max's theory and you finish top 3 by just picking the mascots. And maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll pick mascots on this. So which means it'd be Alabama, because nothing's killing an elephant except for a gun. But Midwest,
depends if the elephant gets hurt during the previous fight. Then all you gotta do is just go after the knees on an elephant.
We're getting here. We got our first participant, Michael John Columbus, saying UConn, Arizona, Houston, and Purdue. So he's going with some Purdue love. He wants Purdue to do to go where they haven't been in ever or a long time. They've been.
Did they fire Matt Painter this morning?
I don't think.
Is Matt Painter still the head coach?
He is still the head coach.
Then no, they're not making. And that's the same reason why I can't pick Tennessee. I can't pick Rick Barnes to actually get past the Sweet 16 until he actually gets past the Sweet 16.
It's kind of funny that they're in the same bracket, right?
It might be Creighton. Creighton might be that team that gets a favorable road to the Final Four simply because they're good enough to beat the teams that are in front of them, and they're good enough to not lose to the teams that they're going to be coming up against. Purdue. I think Kansas is the wild card. Kansas on their day can beat just about anybody. The problem is they're extremely inconsistent.
Purdue has 2 Final Fours, 1969 and
nice.
And 19. That's when they had Rick Mount, of course, when they lost to UCLA, and then 1980. So I'm assuming that both times they've made to the Final Four, Denny Crum won a national championship. He was on the bench, probably on that. I would assume he was on the bench of the UCLA team, but maybe not. So
Gene Katie never made a Final Four.
1980 was Gene Katie's first year, so
okay.
So maybe he did in that first year. So that would have been it. So, and then he rode that for forever. I was little point of history
kind of like
here.
Cal.
I was on Gene Katie's bench when he became Purdue's all-time winningest coach. There you go.
Nice.
Yeah,
What year was
actually.
that?
It would have been 1997. They beat Louisville, and my job when I was at Louisville was to sit on the visitors bench, which was fantastic. I got to sit on Huggins' bench. I got to sit on Nolan Richardson's bench, and basically I was the liaison in case they needed anything. That was what my job was. And
I was living in Lebanon, Indiana that year. I got to go to a couple Purdue games while I was up there.
Okay, nice.
So
good deal.
We were close by and didn't even know it.
Max, you have a first shot at a Final Four, and if anybody listening has a shot at a Final Four they want to put in there, put it up there, man. Michael defending his pick says hate Purdue, but at some point they got to break through. Maybe not. I don't know.
Right,
Max.
For me, my national championship right now is actually going to be Baylor and Houston.
Oh, okay. You think Baylor's going to beat UConn, or UConn's going to get knocked off along the way, huh?
I think Baylor beats UConn to get to the championship, and they'll face up against Houston. I think Houston wins it all. I just want Baylor to go one more week so Louisville can't get a coach for one more week, or it just keeps being teased, and then finally he makes it to national title after all that.
Going up,
they give him a contract extension.
That and then Scott Drew's just like, no, we got to come back and finish this thing.
And then all their backup plans have either gotten a raise or gone on to another school, and they have to bring Kenny back for a third year. I like where your head's
I like
at,
where
Max.
you're going. Oh, all right.
Or they go and hit up Tom Crean, because I mean he looked like he was kind of annoyed with Joe Lunardi today on the desk. So maybe he's ready to go back into coaching.
What about it? Just like overall, we heard Max's strategy for picking his bracket. Going kind of with the jockey and the horse and the color of the silks with with the Derby. What about you, Vince? What's your strategy? How do you go through picking the bracket?
I look at, like I said, who you've lost to, as well as who you've beaten, but more importantly, who you've lost to. Are you a team that can get upset by teams that don't have talent but have a way to get at you? I look at free throw rates, especially how often do you get to the line and how often do you make your free throws, because upsets tend to happen either because a team gets really hot, they're a matchup problem, or one team gets the other into foul trouble. And if you're a team that can get to the line consistently, especially against a team like if they're playing like a Kentucky that gives up way too many fouls, and you're a team that hits when you get to the free throw line, that's a team that, one, I'm taking to cover the spread, especially if it's a bigger spread, and two, that I'm looking at as a team that can go on a run. Because if your outside shots aren't falling, that's fine. If you can get to the line and create easy opportunities at the free throw line, that offsets that.
I like to take, and this is what I'll probably end up doing here in just a little bit. I'll take the teams and I'll look them up and I'll sort them by their KenPom rankings and their now their Torvik rankings and all that kind of stuff, and I'll try to see who's overseeded and who's underseeded. Who's getting a little too much respect and who's not getting enough respect, and I'll pick a lot based off that. And then when it gets a little bit closer, I'm like you, I want to go see who's got, if that small conference team has got a lot of seniors that's playing for something, that's playing for that last time. I'm just telling you, man, they just got another freaking gear, and I just think that's always dangerous. And I'll start looking at some matchups from that standpoint too. But we knew that this was going to be a tournament where Kentucky's future was going to be very dependent on matchups. I think they got some favorable matchups in the first two rounds. I think for them to get out and have to take on a Marquette, you got to hope Marquette gets upset if I'm Cal. And hopefully they can then maybe get that Sweet 16, man. But Houston and Marquette are about as bad as matchups as you can get for a Kentucky fan. So outside of UConn as well,
Houston is the one, like more than UConn. Houston's the one team that I did not want to face because our biggest strength is what we can do with our guards, and they're locked down. They are absolutely relentless defensively. The teams that have beaten them have been able to hurt them inside, and we don't have that. I mean, we know what this team is good at and isn't good at. We do not have somebody inside that we can throw the ball into and say, "Hey, go make a play." Half the time, we can't even throw the damn ball into them without turning it over.
All right. So, any parting words for you, Max, before we get off here? We've been on here for almost an hour and a half. And again, the ESPN Bracket Challenge. Sign up today. Get your chance at some really great prizes. And then the Blind Squirrel on Tuesday. Everybody's going to be out there. Maybe I'll even make an appearance. Max, any parting shots?
Just don't lose to me in the ESPN bracket contest.
It's coming for you if you do.
We need
game
to figure out what the punishment is going to be. Like, do you have to wear U of L? Well, if it's a U of L fan, it wouldn't be a punishment. I was just say, do you have to wear U of L gear for a day or?
Maybe
actually, I know what it is. I know what it should be. They have to run Oklahoma drill with you or Jeffries.
Oh gosh, no. Well, not with me. No. Half the people could fold me right now.
Okay, Jeffries then.
Yes, they have to do it. It can't be cruel, but it has to be a very unusual punishment.
I just realized too, we got Marcus up here. Marcus has been a great fan with these streamers, by the way. Marcus, we appreciate you. He's got UConn, Marquette, Arizona, and Gonzaga. I don't hate that, except for maybe the Arizona pick. I just realized that if I have Marquette in the Final Four, I got to switch it to Houston because I can't have all three of the Big East teams make it to the Final Four. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think two will, though. Yeah, let's see. What else could be the punishment? Let's see. I've had a ride in the car with Louis for 11 hours. Maybe that could be the punishment. No, it was great. We had a good time. It wasn't bad. Let's see what else. I had to fly. Louis had to fly across country from Louisville to LA with me next to me in a Spirit. That's pretty bad. I mean, you had to sit next to somebody my size.
By the way, while you're thinking on that, I wanted to point out you had said earlier you were surprised Providence didn't get in.
Yeah.
They're ranked 2 spots below Virginia Tech and 2 spots ahead of Virginia.
Yeah.
In terms of Torvik. So, I mean, you were talking about
Virginia
earlier.
got in.
You were saying you couldn't believe Virginia got in.
Right.
But they're literally only 2 spots ahead of Virginia.
And then Virginia Tech didn't get in at all, right? So,
no.
Yeah.
I mean, Butler was ranked ahead of them and didn't get in either.
And Torvik?
Yeah. Butler was 52nd, so they were 3 spots ahead. But I'm saying when you're in the conversation with Virginia, for me, it's not a shock you got left out. Virginia had no business getting in at all.
I remember, I think I was looking at the Big East tournament bracket, and Providence was playing someone. I was like, that's almost a playing game. I know that they beat Georgetown. They beat Ed Cooley left Providence to go to Georgetown. Georgetown fans don't get too upset. I think Ed Cooley can turn it around there. I think you're getting a true rebuilding year. And I know that with the transfer portal, you wanted to mention this and you wanted to talk about this. The transfer portal and everything else, there's not a lot of patience with a lot of fans. It's still not going to be a total turnaround. I mean, Cal doing what he did when he came into Kentucky, and again, still lost to West Virginia because we couldn't hit a 3 with a great team, have put a great product on the floor. That's an anomaly. That's really tough to do, right? And it took a special situation. Now, we know that Scott Drew's got some really good recruits that if he is able to bring those recruits the way that Cal brought Cousins and Bledsoe and John Wall to Lexington instead of going to Memphis, we'll see what kind of turnaround they could have. But I think in general, when you're trying to rebuild these programs, the Georgetown people need to be very patient with Ed Cooley because they got a good coach down there. And then whoever Louisville gets, it's you just need to be better than it's been and see the progress and see the fight. I guess that fight word for Louisville fans is like a bad word now, but whatever. So. And listen,
does the new head coach use the word fight does somebody warn him don't say the word fight at all?
I hope he says it 27 times in his press conference. Yeah, that would be awesome. Let's see, Matt, what would be another punishment if you lose the Max?
A 3-hour dissertation where you've got to sit with me in a coffee house and learn about the politics of Star Wars.
No, No, because that would be awesome. I would say
No, you have to
well,
learn
you-
blocking. You have to learn
blocking
blocking
schemes.
schemes.
Ooh, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Without your eyes glazing over. Like if they start to like
Yeah.
zone out,
No.
you're just like, hey, get
Now
back in
here.
here.
Hour and
By
a
the way,
half.
Indiana State, the highest ranked net team ever to be left out of the
29th.
field. They were 29th in the
Yeah.
net.
Yeah.
An
29th
hour and
in
a
there.
half lecture on the history of the Bear defense. Not the Chicago Bears, just the Bear defense.
I don't even know what that is. I've never even heard that term before.
It's with a zero technique on top of the center,
You
2
just
3
lost me.
technique, 2 3 techniques, and then 2 outside ends on the tackle. It's a five down man defense that
All right.
started in the 70s.
Okay. Is it a 5-2?
You could play as a 5-2, 5-1. It was made famous by the Bears. But it's
Our numbers are literally dropping. No.
Oh, what happened, huh?
No, this is the one that I want to do. I want to do the one on the short stint history of Charlie Strong's defensive philosophy on 2 down defenses, because that is one of the most stellar defensive times in college football. Is extremely short lived, but when it was there, it was a high tilt defense.
There
If
you
they're
go.
a U of L fan, they have to listen to 3 straight hours of Kenny Payne press conferences after losses.
Oh man.
No phone, no bathroom breaks, 3 straight hours. Mike, I just sent you something. If you want
I saw it. That's what we'll end with that. We'll let me.
I haven't watched it,
set
so
up.
I want to get reaction.
Oh, you want reaction? Okay, well, then
Yeah.
We'll stay on it. We're gonna pull this little thing up right now from SNNY Twitter feed. Let's see. This is Rick Pitino's actual reaction, I guess, to the net ranking system and being left out, which I just love the terrible green screen
Whoa.
job. Here we go.
Wow.
I mean, we're 32 in the net. Well, first of all, I think we all should probably never mention that word again, because I think it's fraudulent. You know, my son was 25 in the net, and he was saying he wasn't in with 25 wins. So I think the net's something that shouldn't even be mentioned anymore. I think that we had a good strength of schedule. Ken Palm, why mention him? We were 26 in Ken Palm. So I don't know. It's we tried to play a tough schedule. We tried to do things the right way, and we didn't get in. But you know, I never make excuses. I respect the committee for what they do. They give their time, they give their energy to it. They didn't think that we measured up to their standards, and we'll take it very positively like men and move forward. We're not going to gripe. We're not going to say we got screwed. We're not going to. None of that helps. Bitterness does not help. I've had enough bitterness in my life to last a lifetime. I mean,
I'd like to know the bitterness in his life he's talking about. I have no idea what he could be talking about. What kind of bitterness?
I mean, we've only got 15 seconds to discuss that, Mike. So,
you know,
by
listen,
the way,
in truth, though, I love Rick Pitino. I'm a huge Rick Pitino fan. So,
St. John, you was talking about Ken Palm. Torvik had St. John's 21st.
yeah.
And they didn't get in. Do you know who was 4 spots behind St. John's in the Torvik rankings?
Who?
Kentucky.
There you go. I mean, I do think the Big East got the raw end of the deal out of everybody out there, because I think that league's really good. But like I said, like when you beat up on each other and everybody's records start looking the same, and it's hard to distinguish. It gets tough. So, you know.
Well, I mean, Villanova didn't help themselves either by losing 7 games out of 9 in January and February. They were 33rd in Torvik, and then they lost 3 of their last 4 down the stretch. I think that's the biggest issue. Is you had teams in that league that were good, but they had stretches where they lost a bunch of games in a row, and people don't forget that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And Providence was the same. They lost Seton Hall, Creighton, St. John's, and Xavier right in a row, right? So
it also doesn't help when UConn beats all of you by 20 and you aren't competitive, and teams look at that and go, well, you know, the league must not have been that great if UConn didn't even get challenged by anybody.
Providence beat Creighton. That's who they beat in the Big East tournament. And I thought that's when they were going to get in. So, ended the season 21-13, though 10-10 in the league. I do like the idea that you should have above a 500 record in your league to get in. Like, I think otherwise I'd rather see a mid-major with a really good record get in and give a shot if you couldn't win half your conference games. But St. John's did. They were 11-9, 20-13 on the year. So,
and
Seton
St.
Hall,
John's is one of the few teams that played UConn well. I mean, they only lost by 5 in the conference tournament.
and even during the regular season, their first loss to UConn ends up being a lot wider of a gap, if I remember correctly, than it actually was. That game was close, and I thought that UConn ended up pulling it out pretty late.
Well, they were beating UConn at the half.
It's 4 points.
32-26.
They lost to UConn by 4 at UConn early on. So, but then, he loses to Boston College. You can't lose to Boston College. I mean, you lost to Michigan. Michigan was awful this year. So that's what ends up getting Patino. Xavier was not very good this year. So yeah, that'll get him.
Oh, you want something fun?
Yeah, tell me.
The women's bracket draw or the women's bracket selection show just happened.
You mean
second round matchup?
Yeah,
Louisville versus LSU.
Oh,
Haley Van Lith versus the Cardinals in the second round, and there it is. Yeah,
I tell you what, and then I don't know if you guys are hearing it or not, but there's a lot
Baker is going to erupt tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scuttlebutt that Walls might become the new head coach of Kentucky for the women's, and that would be like just the ultimate. I don't know, like if Jeff Walls came to Kentucky, Kentucky writes that blank check to bring in Jeff Walls. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on the women's side. Kentucky obviously out, and Kyra Elzy no longer employed at the University of Kentucky. So they got rid of one basketball coach. They got rid of the basketball coach that I liked. Not saying that she didn't deserve it, but she probably did deserve to move on. But at the end of the day, all right, guys. Anything before we head off today? No game times yet, right, Ince? I just checked a little bit ago.
Don't believe so. Usually they don't come out till later in the night or first thing in the morning.
Whatever it is, we just make sure that we pray and hope that it's not early, so that the post-game show goes on during Streeble show. Nobody wants that. You definitely want me and Ince to bring you home after the Cats win their opening round matchup against the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, and start dreaming again. Because that's all it takes.
The other games in Pittsburgh, by the way, on that day are Creighton, Akron, Texas Tech, NC State.
We're definitely in the prime time.
Oregon.
So we are definitely in the prime time.
So I was going to say, if you're going by eyeballs, then it would be the Kentucky-Oakland game late, which the last time we played the late game on a Thursday night, we didn't end post game till 1 a.m.
Because you lost to St. Peter's?
Lost to St. Peter's. So
I don't want history's job this year. Let's not do it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you this week. Tune in Thursday night and for the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Kentucky postgame show. Take care.